Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership. Don't make this mistake when designing the culture. I see a lot of chiefs of staff make this mistake when they're setting up processes and tools and engagement points and they're talking to leaders about the type of values they want to cascade throughout the organization. They miss this. They forget that how they show up in every interaction they have designs the culture. So the energy they bring into a room, the energy they bring into a water cooler conversation, all those little types of interactions and touch points design the culture in sometimes more influential ways than a whole initiative for employee engagement. So don't discount the fact that as chief of staff, you design the culture in a very dynamic, in a very real way each and every day. So be intentional about how you're doing that. Be intentional. So a chief of staff can swing a room depending on how they show up. And I had a client who was a chief of staff and she was leading her team through a massive reorg. So there was like leaders going in, leaders going out, and lots of rumors and kind of scuttlebutt all in. And people were a little bit uneasy. They're like, I know something's happening, but I don't know what. I don't like this. And she was speaking with the new leaders coming in, and she was speaking with the board, and she knew the 12 to 18-month plan they were putting together. She knew what was happening with this team and with that team and with key personnel throughout the org. And it was exciting because it was actually going to be good news for a lot of people. And so she and I were talking about the meeting she was going to have with the senior management team about the official announcement of the changes that were about to happen. So people knew something was up, but this was the official announcement. And she was raring to go. In our conversation, she was like, here's my agenda, and here's the next steps, and here's what we need to hit at 6 months. So I need people to start doing this, this, and this. And I'm super excited and all these things. And I was like, that's great. So what do you want people to think, do, and feel at the end of this meeting? She was like, oh, well, I need them to be energized. I need them to be calm. I need them to be reassured. I need them to reassure their teams. And I'm like, okay, great. So what needs to happen for them to get there by the end of this meeting? Well, I need to be super clear with my agenda. I need to show them all the steps. I need to make sure we hit our 6-month and 12-month targets, all these different things. And we kind of went through the content of the meeting, which was, all right, the content is probably fine. You may want to simplify that because it's the very first time they're hearing this information and you're way ahead of them. And then we talked about how she was going to show up in that meeting. So meaning how her body language and countenance and demeanor and the energy she was going to be exuding in that meeting. What did that need to look like to get people to calm and reassured and energized for the next steps? And we basically got to a place where it was, okay, so right now they're on edge. Right now they don't quite know what's going on because they haven't been in these conversations for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they're probably a little bit saying, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my team? Who's in charge now? What are they about? And so for her, it was, I need to really embrace and harness being calm myself and being reassured and being grounded and give my presentation, but make sure I'm clear. Make sure I'm speaking slowly because people are listening. They're leaning in and listening to everything I say. And then they're processing that very quickly. They're processing it, digesting it, and taking it in. And okay, these announcements are going through. This org structure is going through. And the first thing they're going to do is go, okay, that's the news. And then how do I feel about that? And one of the first things people do when they want to know, how do I feel about that? How do you feel about that? How does the chief of staff feel about that? What is she giving off? Okay, I also see the new leadership team members standing in the back of the room. What do they look like when they speak? What do they sound like? What kind of energy do they have? And so she could actually swing that meeting to become 2 whole different meetings just by how she shows up. Not necessarily by what she says, although content is important. It's the energy she brings to that meeting. So you can design the culture and kick off a whole cascade of a leadership change and a transition to a new era in a company and culture design with how you show up and the energy you give off. I've been in meetings myself where I don't say a word and I can absolutely change the dynamic of that meeting. So there was often meetings where I was sitting right next to the CEO. And so I was in the eye line of people. So I might not be speaking, I might not be presenting during that section or whatever, but I was in frame. So meaning like, take the State of the Union, for example. When you're watching the President of the United States give the State of the Union address, the Vice President and the Speaker of the House are right behind them. And their whole evening is one big reaction shot, right? So it's like clapping and smiling and nodding at certain parts and like frowny face and like no shake of head at other parts. But they know they're being seen. And so they're really paying attention to how they're showing up and the energy they give off. In the same way, I knew that even though I didn't say a word, that people were watching me, even in the background, even in the periphery. And I noticed when I would kind of drop my shoulders or kind of look down or give off a certain vibe, that a lot of people in that room would mirror that and go, oh, like, okay, now I don't feel so good either. And when I would put my shoulders back and sit up and have a little bit of engagement or brightness in my face, a whole bunch of people would perk up too. And so I wasn't speaking at all, but just by doing that and how I was showing up in that room, I could absolutely swing that room. So you are designing the culture, whether you like it or not, and whether you like people watching you or not, or taking their cues from you or not. You are designing the culture every day and every meeting that you're in, just by the way you're sitting, just by the way you're showing up and the energy that you're giving off. So pay attention to that and be intentional. A lot of times when I have this conversation with people, they go, so Emily, are you saying I have to fake it until I make it? Like, what happens if I'm just not feeling like I'm just tired? I'm just stressed. Like, do I have to pretend to be happy? Do I have to fake a certain energy until I make it? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, yes. Like, sometimes it's suck it up, buttercup. You got to do your job. Other times it might be, I literally can't. Like, I can't do this right now. And in those cases, it might be just articulating that and saying, hi, everyone. I am coming off back-to-back meetings. I just had a really rough call with the board, but I'm here now and I'm just settling in. And I'm really excited to hear about your presentation and about where we are with this project. I know you have been working a long time on this one. And so if I seem scattered, I'm just kind of collecting myself from the last call. It has nothing to do with what you're saying. Just something like that. Or even if you're kind of like in task mode, you're like, don't disrupt me. And someone comes in and you're like, oh, okay. It's like, all right, I can't act all happy and calm and nice to see you. Let's talk for hours and hours. But it might be, hey, yep, let's definitely talk about that. And sorry if I'm kind of in go mode. I'm getting a lot of stuff done today, back to back to back, but let's talk about what you have brought in. So just being able to articulate that if your energy isn't quite where you would like it to be, or is like a little bit like off, where it's like, that's going to be picked up by someone. So be intentional about your energy, and it probably shouldn't be like an 11 at a scale of 1 to 10. You're always at an 11, like, let's go. And you're like bouncing the Richter scale off of itself. That's probably too high and too much energy. So it might be useful to ratchet it down a little bit. If on the other hand, you are Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and you're like bringing your pizza in the classroom, and the teacher's like, am I hallucinating? What is happening here? And you're like, I don't know, I'm eating some pizza and learning about Cuba, man. Then you might want to ratchet it up a little bit from there. So somewhere in between Spicoli and an 11 on a Richter scale, or scale of 1 to 10, is probably where you want to target your energy. All right, so your takeaways for this episode are looking at your next week. Where are some opportunities where you go, oh, I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't aware about that, but that is absolutely an opportunity for me to be intentional about the energy that I'm bringing and about how I want to design that culture in that meeting or in that interaction. All right, so look for those. Go forth, be good chiefs of staff, be great leaders, and I will catch you next time on Leveraging Leadership.
If you'd like some more information on the topic discussed in this episode, head over to nextlevel.coach and click on the resources page for some helpful free downloads.